Hello and welcome to Middle East Matters. I'm Rochelle Ferguson-Biahi. Coming up in this week's show. Triumph as Syrian troops retake the historic city of Palmyra, but can President Assad rid the country of militants altogether? Controversy grows over the video of an Israeli soldier shooting a Palestinian assailant in the head. Plus, Jordan hopes a UNESCO classification will boost tourism, but regional instability looms large. In a symbolic victory, the Syrian army, backed by Russian airstrikes, has retaken the ancient city of Palmyra from Islamic State militants. Moscow has hailed President Bashar al-Assad as a natural ally in the battle against militants. But can Assad rid Syria of jihadists for good? Salam Shantier reports.
It was less than 12 months ago, in May 2015, that the Islamic State group had established control over half of Syria's territory. Among the strategic conquests, the ancient town of Palmyra. Home to some of the world's most well-preserved ancient Roman ruins, the fall of the city, known as Tadmur in Arabic, reverberated worldwide. According to experts, it was this heightened attention to Palmyra's antiquities that made it such an enticing target to the militants. With that, they destroyed many of the monuments, including 2 large temples. The jihadists even used the amphitheatre to stage executions. After a months-long ordeal and the destruction of ruins along with mosques, churches and Yazidi shrines, the militants were finally driven out by Syrian forces, aided by Russian airstrikes.
Liberating Palmyra today is a triumph for Syria, a triumph for the Syrian Arab army. It's a victory over barbarism, savagery, and any attempt to destroy the world's cultural heritage.
The news welcomed by the international community.
We are encouraged and fortunate that Syrian government forces have been able to retrieve and defeat the ISIS from Palmyra.
And it wasn't just the city's historical importance that made it a key target for the Islamic State group. Palmyra also operates as a strategic gateway to the west of Syria, including Homs and Damascus. It's also a region full of gas fields, which have proved a vital source of funding for the militants. Today, with Palmyra back in their hands, the embattled government's victory is seen as a major strategic and symbolic win. And the propaganda footage keeps rolling in.
The capture of Palmyra is a symbolic victory, and it's really meant to boost Assad's legitimacy, both within and outside Syria. The capture of Palmyra portrays Assad as the defender of the Syrian heritage.
Now Bashar al-Assad wants to use the city as a launchpad for attacks against jihadists in Syria's eastern desert. But the question remains, has he managed to regain enough legitimacy to be perceived as the only viable option in the fight against the Islamic State group?
Next, it's thought an EU-Turkey accord to send migrants back to Turkey, plus bolstered sea patrols, could be contributing to reduced number of migrants and refugees reaching Greece. Well, those who dreamed of reaching Europe's shores are increasingly dismayed, while smugglers say they've no intention of scaling back business.
Singing for the country he's left behind. This square in the Turkish town of Izmir on the Aegean coast is known as Little Syria. Thousands of migrants seeking a route to Europe have come through here, cutting deals with smugglers to board inflatable boats to the Greek islands. But after EU leaders cut their own deal to send migrants arriving in Greece back to Turkey, the situation has changed. And Assam and his friends don't know what to do.
Here in Izmir, you cannot earn money, you cannot find money to eat and drink. We are suffering from humiliation.
The Turkish Coast Guard took and detained these refugees hours before the EU deadline came into force. Land and sea patrols have been stepped up, and the number of arrivals on the Greek islands in recent days is down, from an average of more than 1,000 to a few hundred. Locals living near the migrant crossing hotspots are thankful.
Before the European agreement, there were hundreds of refugees crossing the sea from here in boats, but now there aren't anymore.
What I can say is that after the agreement, things in the village have calmed down, and at least we can live a normal life now.
The coast looks clear of the migrant boats for now, but bad weather may have also played a part in delaying journeys. And the migrants and refugees may just be waiting it out to see how the political situation and the weather develops. One smuggler contacted by phone said the flow of migrants had slowed down, but they could always find other routes to Europe.
Some people are afraid to be smuggled now, so the EU deal has had a bad impact on business. But the bottom line is this business is called people smuggling, and it will never stop. It may slow down, but it will never stop.
This Turkish beach and countless others like it tell their own tales. Almost 150,000 Syrians, Iraqis and Afghans have made the dangerous sea journey to Greece this year, leaving their old lives behind. Whatever the policy in Europe, the waves of desperation for those fleeing war and persecution continue.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has defended the Israeli army as anger grows over the video of a soldier shooting a Palestinian assailant in the head as he lay on the ground. Well, military officials have arrested the soldier and condemned his behaviour, a response criticised by some right-wing politicians. The UN's Special Coordinator for the Middle East peace process has called the shooting a gruesome and immoral act. Since last October, dozens of knife attacks against Israelis have been recorded, with almost half of the assaults being attributed to Palestinians from the city of Hebron. Well, for many, the city highlights deep-rooted anger over Israeli occupation. The details with Josh Vardy.
Here in the centre of Hebron and the West Bank, the only Palestinians allowed to pass this security barrier are residents of the neighbourhood. Behind it lies the marketplace, which these days is so abandoned the locals call it the Street of Ghosts. Mufi has lived here for 50 years and, like 80 others, has refused to leave his home.
The worst thing for us is to be encircled by the Israeli settlers. All those buildings you see down there are Israeli settlements. The Palestinians can't even cross the road, and there are military patrols everywhere. I can't even have visits from my loved ones here at my own home.
Around a dozen knife attacks have recently taken place in the streets outside his windows. In this video, a young Palestinian has targeted an Israeli army soldier. Mufi has also filmed revenge attacks between civilians. This footage shows an Israeli settler who's just killed a resident of the neighbourhood.
The only weapon I have is my camera. I try to show how the army and the settlers behave with us Palestinians. There's no justice here. Residents take justice into their own hands.
In the heart of this tense cohabitation sits the Tomb of the Patriarchs, a sacred place for Muslims and a place of prayer for Jews. Sivi was one of the first settlers to arrive here 45 years ago. Since then, around 500 others have joined him to live here in the center of Hebron.
The Palestinians think we are going to flee after their attacks, after their terrorism. They're trying to kill us one after another, but we won't leave. We've been fighting for years. We'll win this struggle, and the Palestinians will be the ones who end up leaving.
Gennady Kaufman believed in peace with the Palestinians, but was murdered in the street by a 21-year-old who was subsequently killed by the army. He wasn't affiliated with any group, but his mother says similar attacks are inevitable.
I am sure and certain that knife attacks will continue. I even hope that my son hasn't died for nothing. He loved life, he had projects, he wanted to marry. But the way the settlers are with us didn't leave him any choice. And that's why these attacks will continue.
Israeli soldiers remain the most exposed to knife attacks. A group of generals have now appealed to the government to make peaceful gestures towards the Palestinians in order to calm the situation.
Jordan's government hopes a recent UNESCO classification could give a much-needed boost to its tourism industry. Officials, though, admit that, like many Middle Eastern destinations, Jordan is struggling to bounce back from declining tourist numbers that cause regional instability, as Fernand Van Tetz reports.
Preparing for spiritual and physical immersion by being baptized in the Jordan River. It's a ritual that has been performed for more than 2,000 years since Jesus himself was baptized here. On which side of the river is a thorny question. Across the water, the Palestinian territories swear by all the saints that the seminal event occurred on the left bank. But here in Jordan, there is no doubt that it happened here on the right riverbank.
Jesus Christ our Lord crossed the Jordan River and came to be baptized on this side.
Who's right is not just a question of religion or politics. Economics also comes into play. Whoever owns the site of Christ's baptism will attract more tourists and pilgrims. The Royal Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan saw a 9% drop in tourists over the last 2 years due to regional unrest. The last 5 years, 30% less European tourists have visited the kingdom, and the government is eager to try and reassure visitors. The deputy director of the site is confident that Jordan remains a safe and stable country. And you don't have to take his word for it, even the Pope agrees.
He went from the airport to the royal palaces by a Toyota Camry, a simple car, not bulletproof. This definitely shows it's a safe country.
The site has been open to the public since 2002. It had to wait for the conclusion of a peace agreement between Jordan and Israel before it could be exploited. Archaeological excavations have been ongoing since 1997.
The site was a closed military area after the 1967 war. We had minefields. That's why our real work started here in 1997 and on. It was totally preserved, and this is another blessing from God.
God's bounty was given a boost by UNESCO. The UN organization classified the Jordanian site as a World Heritage Site last summer. A miraculous uptick in visitor numbers has so far failed to materialize. But those visiting say such classifications are of no importance when they're so close to where their faith started.
Well, that's all from the Middle East Matters team for now. See you at the same time next week.